Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We are just waiting another minute or two until the last ones will arrive. A lot of people joining in from around Europe. Seeing some locations: Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Ireland, England, Portugal, Italy, Spain, and a couple of Germans. And we have from Poland and Ukraine. So quite a broad audience so far.
Shall we start, Matthias?
Yes, let's kick it off. You want to do the honors?
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on why devices lifecycle matters more than ever.
Today, it's the hosts are me, Matthias. I am heading up Tech Cycle at Foxway Group, driving the commercial development around Foxway's premium refurbished brand. My focus is mainly around circular tech and sustainable IT, trying to help organizations turn circularity into strategic advantages. And I'm joined by Alexia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexia. I am the sustainability and client engagements lead here at Foxway. So what this means is that I basically sit at the intersection between sustainability and strategy and sales and customer, trying to digest or translate our sustainability vision and mission into practical initiatives for our sales teams, for our customers' value propositions, but also to have sustainability integrated throughout the company. And so we can have a better collaboration between the business areas. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so the topic for today is we're going to talk about the refurbished market, where we are, where we're headed, which leads over to what this shift means for you guys as buyers and IT leaders. To make it a bit relevant, we're going to talk rethinking tech, making circularity a strategic advantage. Tech Cycle, brand by Foxway, in action, how it works, what it is. We're going to talk about new and renewed tech, building a smarter product mix. So how the balance between the new and the renewed tech can work in practice. And then we're going to round up with some takeaways and some questions, if anything, by the end. And of course, I should have initiated saying that if you have any questions, there's a Q&A. Put the questions in, and we will take all the questions by the end of our speaks. And let's not hold any questions back. So to set the scene and explain why this webinar and this topic is relevant and important to you guys, let's start with what is the refurbished market today. So a lot of independent research is forecasting a very strong, sustained growth in refurbished computers and laptops. It's if we look at the compound annual growth rate, which translates to the average annual growth over multiple years, we have a expectation of between 9 and 12% growth through 2034. So that means today we have about 15 million devices globally talking laptops and desktops only. By 2032, this will be 20 to 25 million devices. But this number keeps changing and keeps evolving because how the market evolves, the CAGR, so the growth rate, has been going up and down by different forecasts. So I named a few of the reports and the people we've been speaking with ahead of this webinar. We are looking at the market valuation is projected to double in the same period. So over the next decade, we are looking at refurbished devices are increasingly being embedded in enterprise procurement, including public procurement. So that means all related closely to both the European directives, but also ESG reporting and CSRD guidelines. We have a more professional and scalable refurbishment ecosystem coming up globally, and that means refurbishing and remanufacturing facilities of second-hand devices are expanding across the globe. So right now we are in the early stages of value-added refurbished computers. Well, the market for refurbished value-added computers right now, but the speed is picking up, and that's why this topic is highly relevant for you guys. So what it means for you guys is, as the market is scaling towards 20-25 million units annually, new device prices is rising. So probably a lot of you guys have already seen the OEMs like Lenovo and HP. They are significantly increasing the prices on first life cycle, like new devices. And this is accelerating the demand for second life cycle devices. So that relates also to the reduced dependency on new is now becoming a strategic choice. So as we see supply chain constraints, AI-driven hardware demand, and the primary market price is going up, all of this is fueling into a shift of second-hand devices. We are looking at refurbished becoming part of the norm. So we're moving into framework agreements now, where it's going to be standard in the procurement policies to have refurbished second-hand devices part of the frameworks. So it's no longer going to be an exception, no longer be a one-off due to saving costs. It's going to be integrated into your organizations and your partners and your resellers, organizations, procurement strategies. The market maturity. So when volumes are growing, as shown on the previous slide, the market becomes more stable. So the prices won't be fluctuating as much. Supply becomes easier to plan, to forecast. So it will be easier for you guys, for your resellers and your end users to start forecasting budgets and structure your agreements around circular purchases. Sustainability is also becoming a measurable bullet in your purchases, because circularity and circular sourcing is not going to be directly, how to phrase it, it's not going to be aspirational, as mentioned on the slide. So circular sourcing directly contributes to carbon footprint and your carbon reduction, and it's also going to be contributing to your ESG targets. We have life cycle strategy reaching the boardroom. So here we're talking circular tech is no longer operational. It's going to be strategic in the long run. And as we now enter 2026, we're seeing acceleration. So the momentum is already building, especially for the value-added refurbished offerings. We are seeing a lot of our partners, a lot of our resellers are reporting a very increased traction across the whole market. And the main demand right now we're seeing is for a scalable circular offering. So the question is no longer whether refurbished devices will scale. The question is how procurement strategies evolve to reflect that reality. And to understand why this shift matters beyond just talking market growth and procurement strategies, I will hand over to Alexia to walk us through the social and environmental challenges shaping the tech industry right now?
Thank you, Matthias. So I think I usually like to start by quickly explaining why circularity matters in the tech industry, and then I narrow it down to the tech industry because ultimately this is where you and us would play. These different steps that you can see are the 5 main steps that are needed to build a tech product and more specifically also a computer. So if we look at the first step, this is the extraction of the resources. The resources here, think about copper, cobalt, lithium, aluminium, and these critical raw materials are finite. So that means that we have a sort of a pile of all these resources that is finite. So we will arrive to a point where there will be nothing left to discover because these resources are non-renewable. So we have the supply of these resources that is really diminishing. And there was this study by PwC that shows a suggested date where all these raw materials will be depleting. So the supply is lowering, but at the same time, the demand is really exploding and unpredictable because these resources that we need for consumer electronics, like computer, we need them for so many other things. Think about defense systems, AI hardware, renewable energy, electrical vehicles. We really need them for everything. And because of this supply that is decreasing, this demand that is increasing, plus because of the fact that we are really depending on a small amount of countries that control these resources, critical raw materials are now turned into a strategic asset, which means that it drives competitions, which means that governments are intervening, which means that then there's price volatility, supply shortages, longer lead times, and less predictable hardware availability. So here, where circularity can help to mitigate that depletion of resources is that we can recycle, we can do material recovery from recycling, but also if you buy an existing device, you also help to reduce the demand for extracting new raw materials. Then if we look at the second step, which is the manufacturing where the devices are being produced. So if we look at these first 2 steps, these are the most environmentally harmful parts of making a tech product. Indeed, if we look at the carbon emissions, so the carbon emissions are usually a very good, well, somewhat of a good measure to see the negative environmental contribution of a product or of a service to the environment. So this is why we talk about carbon emissions. And so 75% of the carbon emissions of a computer comes from these first 2 steps, which is very huge. And this is what drives, in a very short way, climate change. So here, circularity, if you choose a device that has already been produced, that didn't have to be manufactured, you help to skip all these amount of emissions that are related to producing a product. Then when it comes to the use phase, so the 4th phase, I think in the way we are seeing in the industry is that we are still very much in a linear consumption mindset. That means that products are not chosen for longevity. We are still seeing a lot of public tenders that are favoring these short-lived budget laptops because they are cheaper, but they are not made to live several life cycles. Indeed, instead, there should be devices that are chosen because they can live several life cycles. They can live 10 to 12 years. And also, I think it's a bit more of a step back, but I think the way that we consume today is very much tightly linked with happiness, not only in tech, but like we go in the weekends, we shop to feel happy, we thrive to do these unboxing experiences of our iPhones, of our Androids, and we do all experiences. So we still have somewhat of a consumption that is linked with happiness. So I think here, having a circularity mindset, having you think, would that be a device that I would like to keep for the next 10 years is a good way to start thinking in a bit more of a circular way. And then the last step of a tech product, if it's not reused, so it's being disposed, here we are in an e-waste crisis. So it's a bit linked to the way that we consume tech, which is very much in this take, make, waste economy. So the linear economy where we just buy, we consume, and then we throw. We live in an e-waste crisis because not only we have generated 62 billion kilograms of e-waste in 2022 worldwide. So if it's a bit hard for you to think about 62 billion kilograms, you can just imagine 1.55 million trucks filled with e-waste. So that's the amount of e-waste that we have generated in 2022 globally. But I think the major part of the crisis comes from the fact that out of this massive amount of e-waste, only 22% is formally collected and formally recycled. That means that the rest, the 78 other percent, are not formally collected and not formally recycled. They end up in landfills, or they are recycled in backyard operations by people with their bare hands and little safety equipment. So here, circularity, if we can reuse your electronics, then we can help to reduce that number. And the number on the right-hand side shows that we are lacking circularity not only in the tech industry, but also in the world in general. There was this circularity gap report that has found that our economy is only 6.9% circular. That means that out of all the materials that we use in 1 year, only 6.9% comes from reused, recycled, or recovered sources. That means that the rest, the plus 90%, comes from newly extracted raw materials. So I hope this is kind of a good way for you to understand why circularity matters in the tech industry. And now I wanted to explain what we do at Foxway, what is our approach to circularity that we have put into place and that we're thriving to do to manage all these different risks that we have seen before. So we have rethought, or we are rethinking device usage and ownership through our device as a service model, where you can just lease a computer, but also we have this bike-buy program where if you buy a computer, we can buy it back so that we can potentially give it a second life. We are on a journey to stop refusing to sell short-lived devices. So all these budget school laptops typically that can only live one life cycle, so that can only live 3 to 4 years and that don't have a longer lifespan. Reuse, so we have partnership with retailers, with MNOs where we can do trade-ins. We also have these take-back programs. We are reusing spare parts that we are reselling, and we are also reusing second-hand devices. Repairing, we have around 50% of Foxway's workforce that is dedicated to extending the product lifespan. So these are technicians that are working to make products live another life cycle, or just giving them a fresh new look. We aim to reduce the demands for new products, which then in consequence lowers raw material extraction, well, a very small proportion, but still we're thriving to do that, and avoiding the manufacturing process. And last but not least, the recycling. So recycling is the last resort, but whatever we can't reuse or repair, we sort it out in different boxes, and then we can send it to waste handlers so that they can reuse as much as they can. And here, if you wonder to what extent do we walk the talk, or to what extent do we really enable circularity, I think Matthias and I are very proud to say that 74% of our revenue comes from circular activities according to the EU taxonomy. So the EU taxonomy has defined what it means to be circular, and according to their definition of circularity, 74% of our revenue comes from circular activities. So 74% of Foxway's revenue comes from us selling secondhand devices and us offering devices as a contract service. And last year we were at 68%. So I think thanks to you, we are increasing that percentage. So maybe now that you have understood the risks related to the tech industry and why we really need circularity and what Foxway does to be circular, maybe you're getting very excited to know what you can do to take part of this mission, or maybe you're just curious, or you're like, okay, this is very nice, but what could be a sort of actionable plan, or there's so much to do, what can I do? First of all, I think that no matter who you are, what your role is, or where you work, it's about together wanting to push the industry and the society at large towards a more mindful consumption of technology. But a bit more concretely, but still a bit high level, the first thing that you can do is that if you choose devices that are built for longevity, if you choose devices that are good quality and that can live several life cycles, so different lives, you lay the foundations for circular technology. Then, if you help to return your devices back to Foxway, you help to put them back in the loop instead of putting them in your drawer or on your manager's tables. You give the devices the opportunity to be repaired and refurbished by professionals. You give them the possibility to have their time extended. And last but not least, and this is why we're here, is that you can help for the second life to start. So if you're a reseller, your role could be to make refurbished devices a mainstream purchasing decision. And if you're a corporate, an IT leader, maybe your role could be to integrate refurbished devices into your procurement strategy. This is another point in which you can help us enable circularity. And for this last point, well, we will walk us through, we will dive a bit deeper into that, but please feel free to reach out to us if you need guidance on how to promote that behavior, because this is what we want to see. We want to plant some seeds, help you plant some seeds. But now that I talk about refurbished devices, maybe you have some red signals or unconscious bias that are coming to your head, or maybe you're just curious to know more about refurbished devices. So I will pass it on to Matthias for him to explain what he has seen as the most common misunderstandings and how could we potentially overcome these barriers.
Yeah, thank you. So I had this conversation with dozens of partners and procurement leaders across Europe over the past decade of working with Foxway, and the barrier isn't really about sustainability. It's about governance. So historically, refurbished has been perceived as inconsistent, different grading, uncertain supply, unclear warranties, and for many years, that perception was understandable. I myself have been afraid of buying a used product because my hesitation hasn't really been about sustainability. It was about all the risks when buying it. So the market has evolved, fortunately enough. And what procurement teams are really asking is, can we forecast volume? Can we forecast lead times with confidence? And confidence is a really big word in this. So people are asking whether it can fit into their CAPEX models, OPEX structures. Will it stand up to audit internal controls? And they want to know whether refurbished can be treated as a defined product category itself. Because today, some misconceptions are that it's an exception that requires special handling, special treating. So in other words, the question isn't really whether circularity makes sense. It's about whether it fits into the existing governance frameworks. The webinar will be recorded. Sorry, so you can dive into each bubbles later as well. Yeah, so don't fall for the myths. So linking to the previous slide, it's not whether it works or not. It's whether it's structured around. It's how it's structured and whether it removes uncertainty. So these four here in front of you are just some of the myths around refurbished, and you might have some yourself. Refurbished quality is inconsistent. You should be prepared to ask the questions instead. So instead of having the perception, refurbished quality is inconsistent, ask the supplier, ask the reseller, ask your partner, is the quality consistent? Do you have a documented refurbishing process? When you're looking at, can it pass compliance and audits? Well, the carbon footprint you're showing, are there any procedures externally, or are there any procedures which are externally validated? So it's not just Foxway stating this, but is it really tested? And is the supply unstable? Well, go ask the questions. Can we predict the availability? Can we forecast? And is it reliable? How is the solution aligned with the OEM lifecycle timelines? So if we are used to buying products over the next 6, 9, 12 months on the same SKUs, can we do that with your offering? And is it complicated to integrate? Well, ask, are there standardized SKUs? Do the warranty match new device expectations? So we can integrate it properly. So instead of having all these kind of myths, make sure you ask the questions instead of having the misconceptions. And our belief is that you don't scale circular IT offerings by convincing people. I can say quite a lot about it, but the only real way to scale them is by removing all the reasons for hesitation. This leads me to the Foxway offering. Earlier, we talked about what it takes to move from refurbished as a tactical offering or as a tactical procurement strategy, going more into a strategic procurement strategy. So we talked about standardized quality, predictability, warranties, lifecycle alignments, governance. And without all these elements, refurbished will stay opportunistic. So that leads me to the right side of your screens. TechCycle is an offering from Foxway, a premium refurbished brand that has been built around exactly those structural requirements. So it's not just a sustainable product. It's built as an operational procurement model. So if we're looking at the bullets, we have designed it for the B2B environments. So leading back to what Alexia was saying a couple times already, we need to choose the business models, the top seller models that are built to last for several life cycles. So we cannot have the models built only for the first life cycle of 3-4 years. And that is really reflected in our assortment, how we defined this product category of value-added refurbished. Availability at scale. So we build it so that you can order the same SKUs over and over again, the same configurations, just like an OEM offering where you can go to the OEM and ask for the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to order the same SKU again and again. You need to consider warranty. So we had to offer a warranty being compliant as new retail. So up to 3 years warranty. And even in some countries, we have instated on-site warranties as well. And it is already, as I mentioned, built to fit and collaborate with the existing procurement structures. So that means the bullets already mentioned, an OEM-like offering. And well, the last point here will relate a lot to what Alexia will dive a little bit into, but documented CO2 reduction. What we mean with this is we mean the carbon footprint for the device has been calculated and documented, so you can quantify the impact compared to buying new. And the ultimate goal of having a value-added offering like this is to have a new device confidence without the new device impact. And if you're not yet still convinced how refurbished devices can be implemented or how it will affect your business, Alexia will show you 3 tangible impacts of refurbished devices. There you go.
Thank you. So if you buy refurbished devices, or if you buy more specifically TechCycle, you can aim for 3 tangible impacts. First of all, which is one of the most important, maybe the second one is also very important, but you can reduce your carbon footprints. So if we compare the carbon footprint of a new device versus the one of a refurbished device, there is a 95% carbon reduction between the two. Put in another way, if you look at the environmental costs, so the carbon emissions of one new device is the same environmental cost of 20 refurbished devices. So with the refurbished devices, you can reduce your carbon footprint, which will make your sustainability team probably very happy. The second one is that you can reduce your costs. So on average, a TechCycle computer costs 30 to 60% less than a new computer. Maybe very important now that we are entering this very unpredictable pricing for computers. And last but not least, you can also show the amount of avoided emissions. So basically, when you substitute a new device for a refurbished one, you theoretically avoid some emissions. You avoid all the emissions that are related to producing a new product. And this is a metric that you can show internally, that you can show to highlight the positive contribution that your company is making because you're choosing refurbished devices. And so we have made this calculator. We will share the link very soon, well, probably after. But we have made this calculator where you can play around with the numbers. You can play around with what is the price that you get for new, the price that you can get for tech cycle, with the carbon emissions and how the percentage that you would want new and refurbished or new and tech cycle, and how this plays with the carbon footprint, the cost, and the avoided emissions. So you can kind of like try to find your ideal scenarios, or you can go to the decision maker and show them the impact, the 3 tangible, very positive impacts that you can have for refurbished devices. But now, if you wonder where all these numbers come from, maybe it's very small, but the next slide shows.
Oh, yeah. I think Sarah have shared the link in the Q&A as well for everybody. So if you want, you can play around with the calculator and make your matrices.
But if you wonder where these numbers come from, so for the footprint of new laptops, we used 203 kilograms of CO2 equivalents. So what we did here is that we took our 10 most sold laptops in 2024, 10 most sold new laptops in 2024, and then we did the weighted average of their cradle to gate footprint. This will be updated in 2025 to reflect the market, to reflect how OEMs are also thriving to reduce the carbon footprint of their devices, especially maybe by making the use footprint a bit more optimal. The 11 kilograms for tech cycle is the footprints. So this is based on the LCA that was validated by a third-party independent expert that we did in 2021. And this carbon footprint covers the inbound transport, the refurbishment process, and the outbound transport. And it will also be updated in 2026 as we are constantly innovating and we have bought new facilities to make sure that we can cover this huge shift that there is towards refurbished devices. And then the 192 kilograms of CO2 equivalents, that is for the avoided emissions. Basically, the avoided emissions, once again, is the difference in emissions between buying new and buying refurbished. And we calculated that figure based on the World Business Council for Sustainability Development Guidelines on avoided emissions. And we will also share a guidebook that we did on avoided emissions pretty soon to help you better understand this bit tricky metric. So these are the numbers we use, but then you might wonder, or you might have seen different numbers that some of our competitors or just online different numbers that are used. One of the reasons is that there's a data variability for the footprint of new devices. So the emissions for new devices range from maybe 120 kilograms to 420, depending on the model, depending on the manufacturer, the country of use. And this is why we wanted to take the transparent approach and calculate the footprint for new devices based on what we sell, which computers we sell the most. And also, there could be an incentive from other players to make the average footprint of new devices as high as possible so that the difference between new and refurbished is bigger, so then you have a higher potential amount of avoided emissions. And so the better they make you look. But I think here the most important is no matter which footprint you use for new devices, the most important here, I think, is to remember that tech cycle footprint is only 11 kilograms of CO2 equivalents. It's so little compared to the potential footprint of new devices. Yeah.
Thank you. So leading into the 3 strategic takeaways from today. The first one, ask better questions. So demand transparency, demand proof, demand, of course, long-term value. So whenever you go out, whoever you want to buy second-hand devices from, value-added offerings, ask the right questions, and let the misconceptions stay at home. You should, with the model, the calculator that Sarah has shared in the chat, in the Q&A, design your ideal mix. Don't default to 100% new when a smarter balance exists. So instead of just buying the next device in the cycle, focus on creating a lifecycle strategy that makes your IT fleet a bit more sustainable than it is today. So it's going to be flexible, and most importantly, it's going to be future-proof. Yeah, and that was basically also like the third one. Choose resilience over routine. Resilience is a very nice word in the sustainability team, Foxway. And yeah, it's not about managing devices. It's about strengthening how you manage the entire life cycle. So that's basically the 3 takeaways from Alexia and I today. If you have any questions whatsoever it might be, let us know in the chat, in the Q&A. Otherwise, check the link that Sarah has shared in the chat. We will also be sharing the webinar afterwards. There was a few people that wrote me that they didn't get the link. So if you have some colleagues who were not able to attend, you can share it with them afterwards. No questions.
Well, I I got one ahead of our webinar of a colleague here who asked me to cover that question, and he's probably in the webinar now. He was asking, how do you see OEM support in considerations such as BIOS and drivers updates for devices entering their second life cycle? Can you answer that, Matthias?
Yes, that's a very good question. I've been getting that a lot, and it's not easy. So most refurbished devices are typically 3 to 5 years old, meaning they're coming out of their first life cycle. And of course, in the first life cycle, they have the full support for BIOS and security updates by the OEMs, and it's secured in that period. But we are seeing the OEMs are expanding their value-added offerings as well into the market, and around lifecycle services. So I think naturally we will see a bigger focus from the OEMs on ensuring BIOS and driver updates remaining applicable into the second-hand devices for the second and possibly also the third life cycles. So to answer the question directly, I think we are heading in a positive direction on this. And as circular models become more mainstream, as you mentioned earlier, Alexia, yeah, I expect OEMs will increasingly evaluate and also adapt their support structures accordingly to the demand in the market. So right now, typically our fleet of tech cycle is 3-5 years old. They have the first life cycle, and they will also be supported for the next typically 3 years. Some of them are going to be phased out from our assortment because they will no longer be supported by the BIOS and security updates. I hope it gives the answer on it.
I think so. The answer is yes.
No. Exactly. No other questions? If not, reach out to Alexia or myself if you have anything afterwards. We'll be sharing a update with the webinar, as mentioned a couple of times. And otherwise, just reach out to us on email or wave. Now we can't see anybody, but I'm expecting everybody sitting with the big smiles on out there.
And also, Sarah has put the calculator link and also the link to TechCycle's website. So if you want to check out the offering. But yeah, we hope that you learned a few new things today and that you can go back to your organization and try to promote that behavior of having more refurbished devices. But we're super happy to support if you need more arguments or to send a presentation, whatever could help to make that change in the society for more mindful consumption of tech. So that was my final words. Do you have any final words, Matthias?
Thank you for today.
Thank you, everyone, and we hope you have a lovely day. Thank you for joining.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.